Welcome back to Factory Sealed. It is September 20th, 2015. My name is Eric Peterson. Joining me today, Mr. Tom Reagan.
Hey, guys.
Sorry, I didn't mean to throw you off there. I usually go with Jess first, but...
It's fine, I was ready.
Thought I'd give you top billing this week. Also joined by Miss Jess Clarkson.
Oh, hello.
And we have a very special guest today. Developer extraordinaire, Mr. Will O'Neill, is joining us.
Hey, everybody, how's it going?
Oh, man. It has been a week and a half. Tell you what. I've had almost...
Just a week.
Almost zero time. Just a week, but it feels like a week and a half. I think that chalks up to what? Time dilation?
Sure.
Yeah.
We could get into that. Will, how are you, sir?
I'm really good. How are you guys doing? This is nice to be on. It's been... Time has been weird lately. It's been Destiny launch week for, a lot of people, and I've been playing a lot of things, and you guys, yeah?
So, I know that we mainly talk about retro stuff.
Yes.
But Destiny, Dan yesterday or 2 days ago, told me he was bidding on Destiny on eBay for $8. And I said he'd be better off lighting that $8 on fire.
Yeah, he probably would.
And he just could not understand my flaming hatred for Destiny in any capacity. And I spent 20 minutes just hammering out this novel of just seething hatred for the game. And he goes, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't win it. And 30 seconds later, he goes, oh, dear, I've won the bid.
I didn't really like it, and I still think I don't. I think just enough time has passed for a huge part of the player base to forget why they disliked it so much. But I feel it coming. As I grind upwards and the curve levels out and it becomes more and more hellacious, it's starting to come back to me, what's so taxing and horrific about it.
I fell solely into the hype train on that game and went, I could get behind this. I mean, these guys made Halo. How terrible could it be? And man, I had no idea just how bad that game could be.
There was so much hype around it, though. Insane.
You got Peter Dinklage.
It was big, and I mean, it was supposed to go really head-to-head with Titanfall, right? But Titanfall didn't have Peter Dinklage, and it also didn't have all the super hyper-addictive MMO mechanics and the gear grind, which, of course, is what's really the reason people are playing Destiny today, and the fact that nobody is playing Titanfall. So that's, frankly, the bad part of that is that's probably only reinforced to all the AAA developers that you kind of have to trick people out of their money and their time these days with these Skinner boxes, but unfortunately, that's the way it goes.
Did they
I am a critic and a victim of these things. There's just nothing else to say.
You're one of those people I know this sucks, but I just need to keep playing.
That's true. Yes, I am.
They got rid of Peter Dinklage, didn't they?
Yeah, they had Nolan North come in and re-record everything. Even all the old Peter Dinklage stuff. Just so that he could
Talk about a slap in the face.
I don't think Peter Dinklage cares. Peter Dinklage is probably relieved to be unburdened of the embarrassment of that script.
Yeah, I don't think... I'm hoping Nolan North can turn it around, but I don't think he'll be able to. That's a pretty shitty script.
I don't think most people really playing Destiny care too much about the story. I can tell you for the expansion... you talked about time dilation when we were just getting going there. Time dilates with Destiny, and the actual expansion content felt like it was 20 minutes long because you spend so much time in the days that follow gear grinding. I feel like I barely remember the expansion content, and I played it 3 days ago. Jeez. Because you just get lost in that 7-8 hour binge haze of gear grinding.
That's beautiful.
No, which is why retro games are so much more wonderful. And the other big thing I've been playing lately with a retro feel is Undertale. I don't know if you guys checked that out. Yeah, that's fantastic. It's really quite good.
What is Undertale?
It's this sort of retro, sort of Earthbound style inspired new RPG, but it does a lot of really interesting inversions of old school JRPG conventions. There's a lot of meta humor in it. If you've played games like Earthbound and older RPGs like that, it's really quite well done. You guys should check that out if you.
So it's a new game done in retro style.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And like retro style, 8-bit.
So kind of like Call of Cthulhu.
What's
Or
called?
not Call of Cthulhu. Cthulhu Saves the World.
That I haven't played.
Oh my god, you need to. That game's hilarious.
Awesome.
It's a old JRPG style game with Cthulhu, whoever that is, or whatever you want to classify him as, and it pokes a lot of fun at the old JRPG tropes.
Yeah. Sounds like a very similar. Yeah. So I mean, I like that kind of stuff. I grew up playing those kinds of games. I guess you guys probably did too. Yeah.
So, tell us a little bit about yourself, Will. I mean, we've been talking to people about the game that you made that we're playing this week, but who is Will O'Neill as a person?
Well, I mean, the game is very autobiographical. So, I mean, if you play it, you'll get a decent sense, I think, of who I am. But I mean, mid-30s, white collar, writer, sort of creative director. I work in like sort of big corporate events. That's like my day job. And I'm also sort of like a really long time video game fan, player, addict, all the good and all the bad. But beyond that, I'm a fairly typical person, which I think, or I hope, is why a lot of people have really kind of related to Actual Sunlight as much as they have, because I don't feel remarkable or exceptional in any way. Certainly, I don't come from a gaming industry background. Actual Sunlight was the first game I'd ever made, but I've been writing for a long time, both professionally and personally, doing stories and plays and all that good stuff. So I'd say, even though Actual Sunlight was kind of the first thing I did that anyone outside of the 20 people I know would have ever read or seen, there's probably a lot of things I've been writing over the years that are proto Actual Sunlight, and I don't know, it just sort of all congealed into sort of 6 months of pure raw frustration and retrospective that allowed me to sort of create the game. Like, it took me about 6 months to make, but it really covers experiences over 12 or 13 years of my life.
That's pretty impressive that a game like this came together in 6 months, because this, it seems like this is something very, very, very personal that not too many people would really want to put out there. Yeah,
I mean, to be honest, the easy thing about nonfiction is that you don't have to make any of it up, right? And I think that's the thing people have been said to me, the game, it really resonates as being very true to my experience, and like I really feel what the main characters go. And I think they sort of attribute it to a skill as a writer that I may not have, because I didn't make it doesn't resonate so truly because I have this incredible skill for making up things that seems true. I didn't really make any of it up at all. It's all real. It's all really comes and stems from my own experience. So, I guess the craft element of it is putting it together in a way that kind of has a bit of a narrative arc to it. And that there's a bit of skill there, but beyond that, I think it's just sort of something you do. As for not wanting to put it out there, I mean, I don't know. I don't really care. I mean, if you play the game, then you kind of get a sense of the fact that, I've got some longtime friends, I guess. I have a family, but I don't really have that much on the line. It doesn't bother me, and I think art needs to serve the truth, and I understood what I was getting into when I made the thing, and the potential consequences that could arise, and I accepted them, because writing something that was really good was kind of, in a way, the only thing I ever wanted to do in my life. So when I realized, as I sort of got towards the end of it, I was like, wow, this is really good. It's at least better than anything I've ever done. For me, the decision to put it out there, even if it means saying all these things about yourself to everyone in the world, I just rolled with it.
Well, I think before we move on any further with it, for those who don't actually understand what Actual Sunlight is, and without getting into like some of the deeper meanings behind it, like in a nutshell, how do you explain to somebody what Actual Sunlight is? Because I stumbled upon this game about, I think it was like 3.5 years ago. I don't remember how I stumbled upon it. Just some random website said, guys, you got to play this game. And I played through most of it back then, when it was still a free download. And the only way I could ever explain it to people is it is an experience game where you as the main character go through your mundane day-to-day life and try not to kill yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's, the tagline is a short interactive story about love, depression, and the corporation. But obviously, yeah, the sort of impetus you face in the game, the sort of call to action, if you will, is that sort of immediately upon beginning it, you're faced with kind of this question of suicide and this contemplation that the character goes through, and it sort of starts out as just sort of a metaphor and kind of a funny monologue, and then you sort of go through the first room and learn a little bit more about the guy, because it's really more of a character portrait than a really plot driven story. But then as soon as you sort of start your day off, you find out that the character is really seriously contemplating suicide, and from there it becomes even more of a character study of sort of how depression affects him, how contemporary white collar employment affects him, how his failed relationships with people affects him. So it's a lot more nuanced than just this guy wants to kill himself, and you got to make sure that he doesn't do it in a sort of game like sense. But I think you start out that way, and then you learn a lot more about him. And the depression thing has obviously been something that the media is kind of focused on, but I think it has as much to do with just how much life is depressing, as well as depression as a clinical condition. So I really try to explore that sort of idea as well.
I think what you did so well, though, is create this environment that people can really feel like kind of that dead endness, I think. Because it's so terrifying that is the reality for some individuals, and kind of the feeling that you get. And I was telling Eric that it hit so close to home because we're both late 20s, and I jumped from contract to contract in my work, and it was just like so well done to capture the, I guess, comparison that you made with like the character still had a roof over his head, and he still had food, and he still had all of these things. So it wasn't like he was in third world country, or I think you had something about conversion or something. I'm not sure. I can't remember now. But it was just, painted the perfect picture of what, I guess, not modern, but depression can be without being put in situations that are the true, like, life and death type of...
Well, even aside from the depression aspect of it, too, because I think one of the most powerful things you put in there right away at the beginning was you actually broke down that fourth wall and addressed the player directly and said, if you think this applies to you directly in so many words, it doesn't, and don't you dare even think about it. And to me, that was powerful, too, because a lot of people like to, especially in the arts, they like to look at things and go, that connects with me, and I understand what that person was thinking. And I used to be an English teacher, and one of the biggest things that English teachers like to do is they like to tell the students what this book is about.
Right.
And so many times they're wrong. And people can look at this game and go, this game is about how crippling depression can be. And hearing it from you saying, well, this really isn't necessarily about depression. It's about how much being an adult kind of fucking sucks.
Yep.
And that's one of the things that I would actually like to show people that are still young that play this game. If you're 13 or 14, look at this game, play it, experience it for what it is, and then realize I need to enjoy the shit out of my teenage years because adulthood is going to suck.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. I mean, I think, too, if you're that young, the thing I'm also trying to communicate there is you don't even know what the circumstances of your life will be or what the world will be like by the time, 17 years pass if you're 13 years now. And it's just, I mean, it's not just a way of getting people who are younger who are looking at it to sort of reconsider whether or not it's about them, but it's also to refocus it and make it clear, like, this is about a specific experience. This is about all of the very specific reasons that I'm talking about that made this person who they are. It's not something to be like vaguely connected to. I want people to dig deeper and think about if it's really more specific than that, and if they really, really, really feel it. So that, I guess that's sort of why I did it too. I mean, it's difficult to, I guess, some people feel alienated by that part of the game. Some people really like it. Some people think like, oh, well, you're saying I can't have problems. It's not what I'm saying. I'm saying this is about a really specific guy and a really specific set of problems. And and that's just sort of it.
Yeah, I think it definitely kind of speaks to this Generation Y of like people born in like the 80s and stuff, and not going through like a baby boom, like struggling with purpose. And I think we all go through times of like struggling to find where we are and what we're going to do with our lives and stuff. And I work in London, and I'm not sure if I really want to carry on doing what I'm doing. Maybe I want to move around, and without having children and stuff like that to think about, you kind of wonder where your place is. And I think playing Natural Sunlight, it kind of though most people go through these kind of mild depression states, this kind of amplifies it, and it's like, look how much this sucks, like all this stuff rolled into one like neat short package.
It was like you're saying, as like Jess was saying there, this idea that like you're okay now, we're all like in our 20s, 30s, but it's that feeling of being okay right now, but of sort of imminent doom. And it's like or the world is not getting better, and it's not going to. Like someday you'll, as insecure as you are right now, someday you'll look back on this and realize this is like the best you ever were. That's a terrifying thought, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like the baby boomer generation, they grew up and they were on a steady, gradual incline over the course of their lives, whereas us, it's just sort of you're frozen still, and you're just hanging on just to hang on. I mean, it's so that kind of insecurity is definitely a theme in the game. It's something I live and I go through as well. I mean, in Actual Sunlight, that agency that it takes place in, the workplace there, that was all based on a real agency that I worked at. And a few months after the game came out, either Art Imitating Life or whatever, that agency, one day the owners came out and told us, we're like $500,000 in debt, everybody's going home today, we advise you to steal whatever isn't nailed down because the bank's going to take it anyways. And that was it. And then from there I went on to sort of freelance, which is what I do now for all the agencies who used to be our competitors. But whereas at first I thought, oh, this is cool, I'm in business for myself, now I realize I'm actually not really in business, I'm just a part of a precariat. Do you know what I mean? I'm just one thing to another, being like underpaid for this insecurity. So, so everything's fine now, but what's going to happen later?
And that agency, I think you had, the line was something like, all we're doing is pushing money in circles and sending emails or something.
Yeah.
That, like, it's just crazy how, I guess, that is so true for a lot of jobs. And I know a lot of my friends and stuff struggle with that when you're looking at jobs, and everyone kind of goes into the world bright-eyed and wanting to change the world and make a difference. And it's a sad reality that that's not always the case.
Nowhere do you see that more than in people who are just now between like 18 and 21. They come into this world with this doughy-eyed look of like, I can make a difference. And I think the biggest lie that we tell people in school is you can do whatever you want.
Yep.
You can't. You honestly can't. There's a handful of people who can actually make a difference, and no matter how strong your desire to make a world difference is, unless just everything perfectly lines up and you have all the perfect connections and you know just the right people and you have just the right amount of luck, you ain't going to do shit. And that's what I really pulled out of this too, is that no matter how much you want to make a difference, unless everything is perfectly aligned, you just really can't. I mean, not so much of everything in life is just pure luck.
Yeah, I think, when people are looking back on this really big picture, 200, 300 years from now, however long, they'll realize that this entire era was just a weird transitional time to basically a post-labor economy. We actually just don't need 8 billion people to work and to have some sort of life purpose and to go and do what they want or do some great big thing. So this is this weird middle age of humanity where we're still really glorifying things that we don't actually need to be doing and that not everyone can do. And so there's this sort of perpetual dissatisfaction at sort of a massive level. because we still really romanticize having work with purpose and, doing what you want and having family and being in love and this, and it's like all these things are not really accessible to people the way that they were. And some might say that really it was only that way. It was only the baby boomer generation that barely ticked up above that line, and that everything before them was just as bad. In fact, way worse than it is now. But yeah, so I think, I mean, we're getting really off topic here, but I think, basically this is the beginning of kind of the end of work, because we're certainly on the verge of automating tons of work that is dangerous and physical and administrative, and it's only going to go furthermore from there.
Yeah, it's true. It's like on the BBC recently, actually, they had can your job be replaced by a robot? And you had to type in your what you did for a living, and it gave you a percentage. And mine was quite low, but my girlfriend's an accountant, and she's 95% likely to be replaced by a machine.
Yeah.
So,
well, look at all of the fast food workers striking for $15 an hour. It's like McDonald's is going to put out a kiosk where you just press pictures. It's like, sorry, here's your replacement. You had something good for whatever you were getting paid, but now you have nothing. Quit bitching.
Yeah. And then there's us in the realm of digital content creation, where like nothing is worth anything, where everything is just crashing through the floor. Someone at Steam is thinking of a way to turn Steam into Spotify, and it's terrifying. It's just it has to end. That's that feeling. I'm so glad that you guys grasp in actual sunlight that feeling of it has to end. It's going there. It's headed there. In a way, it's like a Band-Aid. The slower it heads there, the sadder it is, because the more delusional everyone can hold on and be for longer.
Well, I think there are two camps of people, and there are those that, I don't want to say that we all fall into that camp and we're the poster children for it, but we recognize that and we accept it and we understand it. And then there are the other people who are just completely oblivious to it. They're like, whatever. And that's why things just keep moving that way, because they don't understand where it's going.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think people are creatures of comfort. And I think any call to people that says, well, you know what, the only way to change this is that we're going to change, and we're going to change our behavior, we're going to treat the environment better, we're going to pay more for this to help artists. Like all these things will never succeed en masse. Everyone will always take, or the majority of people will take the easy way out or the cheapest way out. Like the only thing that's going to solve our problems, I really feel, are technological miracles. We're not going to stop burning down the rainforest. We'll just find some way to make a rainforest regrow from nothing. Like there'll be huge, I feel like humanity will be saved, but it will be by huge, massive things, technology shifts that basically we can't even anticipate now. If it's just reliant on us being better to each other, we're fucked.
But that's the thing with like fishing and stuff. We've completely overfished areas, and someone, I forget, I saw it on Reddit, but someone wrote an article about it and just saying like how screwed we are. Like we are so incredibly screwed, and we don't do anything about it. And I think it's just the inherent nature of humans. It's kind of going to like the bystander effect type of thing. Like someone else will do it. Someone else will take care of it. I don't have to do it.
Yeah, animals will sit in a cage and just do cocaine until they starve and die. You know what I mean? Like they will. People,
I've read those studies.
Yeah. That's the highly monkeys do cocaine study. I mean, I'm not being specific. You guys know what I mean? Like, people will put off solving their problems until the very end. You think rationally, no one will take it this far. But I think a weird paradox with humanity is like we're smarter than our behavior is. Do you know what I mean? We have insight into like, why do we do that? But we do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look at college. Take college, for example. College is a perfect fishbowl of human nature.
Sure.
Oh, you've got this huge project due in 6 months. Don't start it till 5.5 months from now.
A few days before. A lot of my students will be like, oh, yeah, I have a question about this assignment. I just started it, and it's due tomorrow. It's great.
So you're right, Will. We got off on a real strange tangent there, but I think it's all pertinent to this game, and that's what we like to do with the games that we look at, obviously, that have a deeper meaning to them, is actually dig into the actual meaning behind the game. And it's great to have the actual developer of the game on there and say, yes, you're right, or no, you're wrong. And to see that we were all approaching this with the same mindset, or the correct mindset, it's good to see. The game itself, I think you're kind of hard pressed to tell people this is a game, but
Sure.
we're in this period of gaming where this style of game actually is very widely accepted because it's an experience. It is a visual, interactive story. And one of the first games that I played like this was To the Moon. I don't know if you've played that one.
Absolutely, yes, I have. Yeah.
Phenomenal. And that's why I fell in love with this style of game. So when I started playing, it's like, this is exactly what I need, because it's short. It's very short. If you're a quick reader and you do everything, you can maybe an hour and 10 minutes.
Yep.
Very quick. It's something I highly recommend. Sit down and do it in one sitting. Do not break it up, because Tom and I were talking a little bit about this. It's just, it starts off and it's like, man, this is depressing, but I can see where this is going, and then it just ramps up in intensity at the end. And if you break that, you lose that exponential growth and intensity.
Yeah, I really agree. I think the canon way to play it is to break it up and not do save games. I mean, I think there was even I put out kind of like a 3D version of the game, more sort of like an experimental test, and I took saving out of it completely, because if I really had my druthers, it would be a one and done sit down experience. Even, having just released it for the Vita, my real hope there is not that people will play it 5 minutes at a time on the subway. I like the fact that it's handheld, because I like the idea of someone being able to take it to a quiet, meditative place and go through the entire thing in one shot. Because absolutely,
that's what I played it on. I played it on the Vita, and I actually went and sat in my bedroom and played it.
Yeah.
And I think it would have been a different experience had I played it on the couch, out in the living room with all the noise going on. It probably wouldn't have been as impactful. I knew it was going to be a heavy game because I'd played a chunk of it before, and I wanted to have that environment. Like, I just need to immerse myself in this.
Yeah, but no, the pacing's really intentional. And I mean, and that's a good example, I guess, too, of like how, even though as non-fictional as it is, and hey, we can talk about all these things the game's about, I'm still a writer, and I'm still trying to put that sort of, it's got kind of a 3-act craft to it, and I sort of stick to the fundamentals. I mean, it's not really a game. You're right. You struggle to call it that. To be honest, I think a lot of people who are game developers say like, "Oh, you made this game with a lot of writing in it." But I almost see it from the other direction. I'm a writer first and foremost, so I look at Actual Sunlight as a piece of writing that is greatly enhanced by being a game, rather than a game with a lot of writing. I think it's something that if it had been a book of monologues, just one after the other, might have been okay. It might have made an okay film, or a little short film. But I think it's at its absolute best as a game. And when people ask like, why would you make this game? That's what I say, because as good as it could have been in any other medium, I think with it being a game, and with the pacing that I was able to put into it being a game, and obviously, stuff with removing agency from the player's time goes on, like all those things that only a game can do. And as well, let's be honest. I mean, game addiction and the protagonist being a person who plays games connects it with that audience as well. It was just sort of the right choice and the right direction to go.
So there was. Oh, go ahead, Jess.
I was just going to say, it's kind of going into more of that art form, because I've played a lot of like Twine games and stuff like that, which are just text games. And there's this like huge, really cool indie game, I think, movement in Toronto. Because I'm pretty sure you know Jenny and Henry from DMG.
Yep.
Yeah, so I went to a few of those game jams and stuff, and it's just incredible to see a lot of the artistry come through and trying to elicit these emotions and put the individual, like, immerse them within the game. And I think that was done really well. And I guess it kind of makes me a little sad when people kind of disregard those games for not being game enough, because I think that's very limiting to the industry, I guess.
I mean, I tend to perceive people who have that opinion as being people who honestly probably don't read. I think I think that's their real beef. They just don't want to do a lot of reading. They sort of inherently see the medium as something where reading should be kept to a minimum. Like when I could be wrong, but I think of people who are really vehemently against that as being people who skip every cutscene. Do you know what I mean? These are the people who are now way ahead of me in Destiny, because at least I listen to Nolan North. It's that sort of thing. And yeah, and you're right. In Toronto, we have like an incredibly vibrant scene. Like quietly, almost all these people that you think of who make a lot of these narrative games are Toronto people. Like Ken Gao, who made To the Moon. He's from Toronto. Like I know that guy. I see that guy at events. The person who inspired me most on the indie side was Christine Love, because her game Digital Love Story and Analog, she was the one whose games really convinced me, no, you can have a game that's like 95% text and narrative and still have people really, really connect with it on a deep level.
I won those games at a draw, actually, at a DMG event, which is
fun. Yeah, well, no, I mean, if there was no Christine Love, there would be no actual Sunlight. That's safe to say, because Digital especially just like blew me away with how good it was and how it kind of tackled themes too of like early online culture and just that early email feeling. Because I remember like the BBS scene back in the day. I think it really kindled that sense of nostalgia in me that I think led to a lot of the motivation to write stuff in actual Sunlight. So yeah, I love her, and I love a lot of people who are making Twine games in Toronto. And actually, I'm running a festival this year in November called Wordplay, and we're doing that at the Toronto Reference Library in November 7th. And we're going to be having games from like Twine games and other narrative-focused games from all over the world. So that's
cool.
Nice.
Yeah. So we got a really, really good scene here, yeah.
So I have a question, like specifically about the game itself and something that existed within. You mentioned a little bit ago that the game is very text heavy. It's exclusively text, but you walk up and you can interact with almost anything, and anything that you interact with or can interact with brings up just a black screen with white text, and you're forced to read it. And one of the most compelling pieces was the doctor-patient transcript. And when it first begins, you're sitting there going, okay, well, he's just recalling his time in therapy or his time with a doctor. And by the end, you come to realize he's making all this shit up.
Yeah. Spoilers.
What drove that?
I think, initially I kind of understood that it was a conversation with a therapist. At first, I didn't realize what the twist was going to be, that it was going to be that the therapist was a person that he was making up. I think initially my thought was it would be sort of realistic, because that was kind of a way to invert that kind of trope that you see in a lot of games already, right? I mean, that's part of the reason you expect that psychologist to be real, because you've seen that in Silent Hill. You've seen that in, X other games. So it was a good turn. I mean, it is autobiographical to a certain extent. There really was a therapist that I saw one time that kind of was like, it's not that he told me to go away when I had some real problems exactly, but it was sort of like that. I think what he had said to me was like, listen, my job is to help people, uncover insights about themselves and why they do the things that they do and what's really holding them back. He's like, you don't lack any insight whatsoever. He's like, you have a comprehensive, almost obsessive understanding of what's going on in your life. So you just need to sort of act upon it. And I guess I found that discouraging, or didn't maybe not want to go to it anymore. And then from there on, I think I started to think about, well, what if this was just sort of him talking to himself, and what possibilities would that open up? And from there, I think that's when I started writing a lot of the stuff, where he pretends to be talking to a late night television host, and pretends to be, a professor at university. So that was a pivotal thing when I realized that psychotherapist or psychologist was not real. It was just a part of his fantasy life. And it is a thing. Yeah.
I really like that too, because, from that almost depression side, it really illustrates the fact that a lot of individuals, maybe not too depressed, but individuals with depression, they often struggle with seeking out help because they have that mind that nothing's going to help. They're not going to be able to help me. I'm not going to benefit from this. Nothing's going to change. And kind of that all or nothing thinking. So I really liked how that you thought he was getting help, and you thought he was actually actively doing something about his condition, but it all turned out to be his own thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of it is that depression thing. I think you're right, that kind of polarized black and white thinking is a part of it. But I think it's also, again, it just goes back to being about real life and how the extent to which, we all just kind of, it's easier to just live in your fantasies to a certain extent, and that's got a lot to do with video games, but it's also just got a lot to do with media, where you are focused to sort of, like we were saying earlier, go for your dreams. But if all you're going to do is go for your dreams, you're going to spend a lot of time dreaming, and you're going to be focused on all this stuff that's not necessarily real. Just you're going to focus on this life that you wish you had, to the point where that life that you wish you had can become more real to you than the one that you actually have. And I think a lot of people do that. I think a lot of people relate to that, even people who don't necessarily struggle with depression. It's just a way to, in the immediate term, sort of cope with your own feelings of doom and negativity about your own life. But the problem is, in the long run, I guess it becomes really quite harmful, because you actually don't do anything about it.
Well, why does anybody play games or read books or watch movies? It's just an escape.
Yeah, it's you have the capability to grow in fiction in a way that you might not in real life. You play a game, you play Destiny, and you gear up. If you put time and effort in, and you get something out of that. But you put time and effort into something in real life, it might work out, it might not.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. I was just thinking where we can go from here. I don't want to ruin the end of the game. We generally don't care too much about spoilers in this, because
I mean,
most of the games,
honestly, it's been out for since early 2013 now. I think most people know a bit about it, so it's all right.
I was going to ask, obviously, we said that it's mostly text heavy, the game, but at any point during your development phase, did you consider any extra gameplay elements that you may have originally had and then stripped back because you felt they didn't fit or work, or anything like that?
No, I think I wanted to keep it relatively text focused. I mean, I think that there's certain things that I did, that would enter the consideration of a game maker. I mean, I think the way that the text builds, where you have to sort of prompt it at every piece of punctuation, was very sort of intentionally done, and I wanted that to be in a game-ish kind of way. I imagine someone sitting there pushing a button, because I felt like the text building in that way gave it the feeling of being a thought that is building. That feeling of it actually being an internal monologue in a way that I don't think I would have achieved if it had just sort of been on the screen. So again, that there's that mechanical empathy to it too, right? Even if it had been like a film and I had built the text that way, like it pauses for a second after every comma, that wouldn't be the same as having to actually push a button to make it advance. And the same with just playing the character and walking around in the world. Like, let's say, to go back to Twine, could Actual Sunlight have been a Twine game? Yeah, absolutely. Just like all text on the screen, and you click on hyperlinks around the room. I could describe, the bedroom, say, and here's the dresser. But I feel like actually walking up to it and hitting a button, there's a certain mechanical empathy that makes you connect with it in a way that you wouldn't otherwise if you just clicked on the word dresser. It has that feeling of the way you look around a room and you see an object from your past and you see it, but when you focus on it, it makes you think of the memories that you associate with it in a really real and raw and visceral way. And I think, off the top too, I sort of set that up when he's first talking to the therapist, and he's saying, why does thinking about suicide, like, how does that make you feel? And he's, does it make you sad, angry? And he says, no, it makes me feel kind of, nostalgic, makes you feel reminiscent. And, that sort of sets up how you interact with objects for the rest of the game as well. So gameplay elements, not precisely, but did I give a lot of thought to how controls in the game work and how you control the character and how you control that pure text experience? Absolutely. In a way that I think a game designer would think about it as well.
I'm actually glad you took that route, because going back to the Moon, the thing that pulled me out of that game were those puzzles. Because it didn't fit the style of the game. It's like, this would have been awesome because the story is super engaging. You just want to find out what's happening next. And then it's like, I have this. And they weren't difficult, but it pulled you out of it for just that brief few minutes. You're like, another one of these.
Yep.
Yeah, I recently played a game called In Between, which is about a guy who's suffering from lung cancer, and he has to go through the emotions like acceptance and fear and all these different emotions that come with having such a devastating illness. But every single level is a puzzle, and they get obviously progressively more and more difficult. And in the end, I was just like, these puzzles are great, but I'm definitely more of a narrative, story-driven kind of person when I'm playing these games, and it did actually mean that I just folded and left it, which was a real shame because it was really well narrated and nice voice acting and stuff. But
I think those people try to make that game and say, oh, well, this doesn't fit the traditional mold, so I need to try to pull some traditional game elements into it, when by doing that, it actually hinders their game.
Yeah, it was not necessary. It just made the whole experience disjointed, like puzzle marked with the serious undertones of life. And I felt like with Actual Sunlight, because it carries you through, like you say, with the tactile input of being able to action through the sentences and stuff, that was much more fitting for me. I really enjoyed that kind of stream of consciousness, because that's the kind of fiction I read anyway. So I was really drawn to that.
I would submit that you guys are absolutely right, that people who are making games are scared that if it doesn't have a strong gameplay element to it, that it won't draw a certain audience. I'm a little less scared of that. I tend to feel like those people that you think you're going to draw, you won't draw anyways. Like, you might as well do what you really want to do and focus on the audience that you really want to focus on. But I could be wrong. I mean, I think with To the Moon, to be honest, I think the real strength of that game is the music. I mean, the music is what's just like, I mean, it's all good, but the music is what makes it soaring. Like, it's just incredibly, incredibly well done. So, without that, I think that's its most vital element. But yeah, the gameplay stuff, it takes me a bit out of it too. And same in A Bird Story, which is his recently released game, like, really good. But again, the sort of puzzle stuff, you don't know why it's in there.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a difference between making a game to sell and making a game to tell a story, and that could be where that.
Yeah.
And it's weird, the sort of infatuation that, like, even you see in AAA, where they'll get on stage at E3 and they'll be like, we have this mature, great storyline. Like, the marketing people, they love to sell story. It seems like they don't actually love to do it in the end. I think selling is really good for promoting a game, but the truth is almost nobody plays games all the way to the end, and all the best content is front loaded. Like, there's all these reasons, if you want to be cynical about why story ends up playing very little part in, like, a really big commercial game. But there are exceptions too. I mean, Her Story is probably the big narrative success story of this year, and that was so clever, right? Did you guys play Her Story? Oh my god, because it has, like, just enough interactivity to feel like a game. It's a completely narrative-driven experience. I mean, that is a hole-in-one. Like, Sam Barlow, that is how you just truly play to all sides. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And do something that's narrative-driven while also having just enough of a game-like experience to really satisfy people and draw them in.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I would like to check out Her Story. It does look really interesting.
It's exceptional. It's real well done.
Yeah, and I did check out a game called Missing, an interactive thriller, which brings back, it's like a throwback to the FMVs from the 90s.
Yeah.
And it's like funny how that's working out. It might be time for a resurgence of FMV, because it seems to be working if you've got the production value to tell a story in that way.
Well, all you gotta do is get decent actors. I mean, you guys remember, like, the old school 1X CD-ROM?
Yeah.
I mean, the performances were terrible. I mean,
look at what they did with...
They're putting programmers in, like, bathrobes and just saying, okay, you're a wizard. Like, terrible. Awful.
Look at Wing Commander for PlayStation 1. They had Mark Hamill in there. That game was phenomenal.
Yeah, Wing Commander 3, Heart of the Tiger, and then he would... Oh, man, really good. Oh, yeah, but money was spent. I remember when that game came out, and it came on, like, 7 discs. Like, It was the box weighed 20 pounds. Like, it was crazy.
I had that for PS1, and I actually still have discs 2, 3, and 4, but I can't play it because I don't have disc 1.
Oh, man.
And the big old PlayStation 1 box that was way too tall for any respectable shelf.
Yep. I remember it.
I was going to ask that... when you were writing and developing this game, like, were there any obstacles that you had to overcome? Like, what was the biggest challenge? Was it just writing it itself, or any technical challenges?
Maybe I'd say maybe what to take out. because in the end, like I believe in that sort of Kurt Vonnegut maxim, start as close to the end as possible. Everything you do should build character or advance the story. And there was a lot of stuff in there, like you kill your babies when you do anything creative, but it was like these decisions to like take out stuff that was really about my life. Like there was stuff in there that detailed kind of the relationship between Evan and Jackie, but taking it out, you realize it's stronger. It's stronger to imply some things than it is to explain them, and it's also stronger to keep that experience short. I knew that Actual Sunlight was definitely something that had the potential to overstay its welcome, and it's self-indulgent by definition. It's autobiographical, so you don't want to take people on too long of a trip or too long of a journey, or I think the whole thing just starts to fall apart. And you definitely want to sustain interest up at the end. So yeah, definitely the biggest challenge was just like, what can I take out that doesn't hurt it?
I think had this game gone on any longer, it ended right when it needed to. It probably would have started to hit that like, okay, when's this going to end?
Yeah,
because it's so heavy, it's so emotional. You cannot sustain that level of emotional interest for much longer than an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. So you hit it perfectly with how long it should be.
I mean, and it starts out pretty intense too, right? It's not much of a crescendo. You're right. It's pretty harsh all the way through. The most you could say, I think I try to do consciously was keep it a little bit humorous early on, like darkly humorous, but still funny. And then as the game goes on, that diminishes and then eventually it's not funny at all.
It does feel like one huge act. If I could put any marker on there that possibly split it, it was when I felt like the tone changed quite drastically when Evan gets back from work and just like starts flipping out and like just smashing stuff. Like that's when it kind of feels like it takes a turn for the worse.
Yeah, the red screen.
Yeah, when the screen goes red and like everything's just a bit just wild and surreal. Yeah.
I mean that's a big visceral turn. I mean, I think for me, I feel like personally the turn is sort of when he kind of goes home at night, because I think one of the things I try to do really consciously in the game is show like how outwardly normal he appears to be. Like he's at work, he talks to people, he's a regular person. If anything, he's in conversations with people, and they're the ones who are flipping out. And it's give a sense too of him at home when he's by himself and his own internal thoughts and how he is out in the world. And then it's like, it's almost like a bit of a horror element to it that, by night he's like this different person whose alienation and isolation truly sinks into him.
Yeah.
Well, there's that phrase or that understanding that, don't judge people based on what you see, because you never really understand the struggle or the battles that they're personally fighting, because people can be outwardly different and then completely different at home in their own time. You really have no idea who anyone is.
Incredibly well done with the chick he was sleeping with. I forget her name. The one who was also sick.
Yeah. Jackie.
Yeah, that bawled my eyes out at that part when she was saying that she's feeling better but not great, and there's the thought that said that she's too sick to be fine but not sick enough to like
not work. Yeah, she edged that line where she's still got to be in the world but not be any good at it.
Yeah, and it's great because I have a chronic illness, and I know a lot of my friends with illness as well, like going to that invisible component. Like it is such a fine line, and it's so challenging to kind of tiptoe that where you're not fine enough to live a normal life, but you're too okay to be like on disability or anything like that. And that was to me like super powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the contradiction I was trying to sort of point out there too, it's the sad thing is it's what brings them together, because they relate to each other, but it's also what drives them apart, because in Evan's mind, I don't think in hers, but in his, it's like we can't be together. We're both fucked up. Like what does that future really look like? And he's more interested in who he wants to be than in who he really is. Mm-hmm. And it's I try to explain it in a way that makes it seem clear that like it's not that he's selfish exactly. It's just that he's terrified of it. Like he doesn't want to be super miserable later, and he thinks anything he does later. Anyways, it's all. I mean, it's all autobiographical. So it's all based on a relationship that I was really in, or not in, I guess, so to speak. But yeah, similar kind of thing to that. So yeah, no. So thanks. Yeah, I'm not a lot of people ask about that. Everyone's really focused on like the autobiographical part, but it's definitely, I say it's about love, depression, and the corporation, and it really is about love and the corporation as much as that thing in the middle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is there anything that you would change about it at all, or are you happy with how it turned out, the complete work of fiction? You wouldn't want to change it?
I'm pretty happy with it. Like, I mean, I think it's the best thing that I've ever done. I don't think I'm like the most talented writer in the world. I just kind of, drew on some real stories in my life and worked hard on it. But no, I mean, I think I took out just what I needed to get. Like, I think it's in a position when I put it out, I was like, you know what? It's, that something you've done is good when it begins to feel fragile. Like if you dare touch it anymore, you can make it worse than better. Do you know what I mean? And when you get to that point where you feel like the risk of screwing it up is higher than the potential upside of making it better, I think that's when you're really close, and when you should probably just let something be.
So how did you decide what to put this out on? Because initially you just put it out for people to play in its original form, and it was free. Then you came 2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, it dropped on Steam and Vita, of all consoles.
So initially when I put it out, again, I didn't know anything about indie games or people who sold them or did anything like that. I just put it out, and I said I'll contact some media, and I'll hopefully get a review or two. Maybe a couple of people will play it. But I had never done anything as a writer that had been successful. Like I'd written some short stories that kind of were in little journals. Had like a piece in McSweeney's once, but I was like used to just sort of nobody caring about this stuff. And so nobody did for like, I guess, the first month. It was like January of 2013 I put it out, and anyone could just download it. And like the website was like super intimidating and dark. And so I think that it was like discouraging. And then I guess about a month after that, I'd sent it to a lot of people, and then Kotaku picked it up. And then like in the space of like 20 minutes, I think, I don't know, like 30,000 people downloaded it. Like it was really huge. Like having sold games and also given them away, I can tell you that the price, I feel like 95% of people want to pay is nothing. If you put something out for free and it's good, oh my God, the internet will explode. It's the money that is the holdback. So, a lot of people downloaded, but I really wanted to sell it. Like I felt like, I put a lot of work into this. My plan was to eventually turn it around and sell for a couple bucks. I did like an Indiegogo thing because in Canada we weren't allowed to do Kickstarter in early 2013. Yeah. Oh, so many years ago. So I raised like $2,500. And I found an artist I really liked to do that full screen artwork. And Alina Sechkin did the pixel artwork, like of all the characters. And she's an artist here in Toronto, so she's really cool. And a guy named Robin Ogden did the music. And I was just like, look, guys, I raised a couple grand. I just whacked it up between everybody, and everyone just got to work. And then I sold it for like $5 on Humble. Because at this point I had started to hang out at Bento Miso or DMG, so I started to know some people, and I said, can anyone get me kind of hooked up with anybody in the selling side? So I was on Humble, and then I went on Greenlight. And this is not now. Like now you go on Greenlight and your game blasts through in 3 days. I was on Greenlight for like a year, crawling. And then when it finally got through, then the game came out on Steam in like April 2014. And then I think so it did okay there. And then September I went to a conference in called Gamer Camp in Toronto, and that's where I met a guy from Sony, Nick Sutner. And I said, hey, well, I guess here's the thing. He gave like a presentation on indies who want to put their game on their platform. So the Xbox people, but a lot of people go to these guys and like, well, this is this cool game I want to do. Everything blows up and you shoot it, guys. Like that's the usual pitch they get. Yeah. When I go up to this guy and I'm like, listen, I have a game that is not going to be a big success, but it's already finished and you don't have to do anything. That's a pretty compelling pitch. Yeah. So I basically said, for Vita, like I love the Vita personally, and I really don't think it's a good game for TV. So the Vita was the only thing I ever wanted to put it on.
Did you ever contemplate something like the 3DS?
To me, like Nintendo, I don't feel like they would go for it. As much as Nintendo, I think, is trying to reach a little more into the mature territory now, it just feels weird to me, man. Maybe it's the way I grew up, but I think Nintendo stuff is like, it really is for kids.
Well, don't they have?
Like, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about actual.
I think the Binding of Isaac is actually on there too.
Hello? Is it really?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about Nintendo. Like, I don't know.
You made this on, was it RPG Maker that you used?
Yeah, the initial version, well, the one that's still on Steam, that's the RPG Maker version. And so what I've been like a big thing I've been doing over the past 2 years too is like learning a lot more about Unity and how I can do things in there. So I actually sort of recreated an RPG Maker-ish environment in Unity with the help of this other sort of Unity extension called Adventure Creator, which is really fantastic. And the developer put some stuff into there just for me and what I was trying to do. So he's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so now, so that's what I'm going to be using going forward. Like, Unity is really great. Like everybody else, I'm using Unity because there's so much you can do with it. But yeah, no, my RPG Maker days are probably done because RPG Maker is as cool as it is. It's pretty rigid, especially in terms of cross-platform support. I mean, it basically doesn't exist. You can put wrappers around it. Like if you've ever heard of a game called Always Sometimes Monsters by a studio called Vagabond Dog, they did their stuff in RPG Maker, and now they've released it on like mobile platforms by using kind of a wrapper situation. But I'll just rebuild in Unity. Just do everything in Unity. It's fun. Everyone was threatening a few months ago to jump over to Unreal. I'm like, nobody's going to do that.
Yeah.
No.
Unity.
Yeah, the asset store on Unity is fantastic, I guess. If you're more of a writer and stuff, you've got access to models and stuff like that, so you can really. I've seen people like build games just solo, like with no help because they've just had help from communities online, and the community for Unity is so strong.
That's us, the people ruining video game development. Building it, no, nothing. Although it is interesting. But you think about it, this is something that is, okay, it's led to a lot of crap, but it's also opened up people who come from entirely different artistic disciplines, allow them to come in and actually make a game. Like I can actually, by myself, just bring my writing to bear in that format. Someone who is just a visual artist can do something on their own just using a tool like Playmaker. That just goes with like through flowchart. Like it's really good. Playmaker's amazing. So it's sort of, there's going to be a lot of crap, but you're also going to have people now who are able to make games who may have never had that level of access before.
Yeah, definitely.
That's really cool. That opens up because honestly, as a million people have said this better than me, the actual culture of studio-based commercial game development is incredibly rigid demographically and otherwise. Mm-hmm. So it's a form. It's an art form that could do with a little opening up.
That's fantastic.
Off topic a little bit.
Yeah.
The friggin' Toronto Easter eggs were hilarious. So good.
Yeah. Did you play on PC or Vita?
I played PC.
Yeah. So unfortunately, a lot of the stuff is out in the Vita version. That's one little difference. Because doing brand names and stuff like that, it's a little. For Sony, it's a little bit like so you won't find any of that stuff. You won't find any Shoppers Drug Mart or Swiss Chalet.
But that Rogers reference.
Yeah, the Rogers reference. Yeah,
made my life. That was so funny.
Yeah. Oh, to get back to an earlier question, was there anything I wish I could do? I wish I could have made it more Toronto. Like I wish there was more Toronto-ish sort of stuff I could have done. that would have been great. Because the whole game, the game reflects my feeling about the city too. I was born and raised here, and I feel like over the course of my life, like I've liked it less and less, even though it feels more and more like home. And it's honestly, it's like a metaphor for the whole thing, where you become more and more comfortable with something you like less and less.
Yeah. So good.
Are you from Toronto like your whole life too? Are you?
I grew up in Ajax, and I live in Stouffville, so just GTA.
Yeah.
But
any final thoughts we want to share on Actual Sunlight? I think we dove pretty deep into it.
I laughed. I cried.
Sure.
Good.
If you haven't played it, you should. That's the big takeaway.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
It was worth it. Dan Curtis, who is not with us today, I think should still take the time to play it.
Yes.
Hopefully he did. Anybody play anything else this week? I know it's been a busy week for everyone.
Pokemon Snap.
Oh, shit. Is that
the original, like the N64 one, or is there a new one?
Is that the game that Matt Buell sent you?
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. It was
Isn't that just a game on rails where you take pictures of Pokemon? It's like Pokemon voyeurism.
It's really good, though.
Yeah, it's not just that. That's what Andrew said when I was playing it. He's like, really? This is it? But, like, there's so many different things that you have to do, and, like, going back to levels once you get more tools, and...
But the core mechanics
your
remain.
subjects aren't passive. Like, Snorlax wakes up, you know?
Yeah.
Oh dear. He wakes up.
Yeah.
So you can get a picture of him sleeping and awake.
Yeah, but the sleeping picture is worth, like, nothing. Like, your pictures are rated based on... like if the Pokemon's in the middle of the frame, the pose that they're doing, the action that they're doing, and then you build up points that way.
So that's where all of the teenagers think or got that idea that if they have a DSLR, they're a photographer.
Basically.
Yeah, selfie culture, 100% to blame on Pokemon Snap.
Oh, shit.
You're first.
That game never... I mean, I'm not a Pokemon fan in the least bit. I've never completed a single one. The most I played was Pokemon Yellow for this show 2 years ago. Hated it. So I don't know what the draw for this would be. Because I remember when the PS3 came out, or before it came out, they were advertising a game called Africa. And the only concept of it was you're this safari guy out in the middle of the African wilderness taking pictures of zebras and hippos and giraffes. And I don't even know if that game ever actually came out, and if it did, it probably tanked.
I've never heard of it.
I'm going to look it up right now. I think they spelled it with a K. Yeah.
Because that's how Africa should be spelled, right?
Yeah.
With a K?
Yeah, I think, like, Brazil is with an S.
C.
Oh, no, yeah, no.
Maybe
it's
it is
a
a
C.
K.
I don't know if that game ever... Oh, yeah, here it is. Hot garbage. But yeah, I don't know I don't really necessarily know the draw for Pokemon Snap. What, Tom?
Oh, I see. I was going to say I recently played a game called Police Noughts. I played that this week. Don't know if you've heard of that.
Where do you come up with these games?
Yeah, I've not heard of that. These nuts.
Yeah, it's like because some awesome devoted people created a fan translation into English.
This looks like that
It's a
Strider
visual
game.
novel.
Yeah, it's a Kojima game. It came out for the Saturn and I think for the PS1 as well. I'm playing it I'm playing it.
Did you finish that? What was that other one we were playing? Strider? Snatcher. Did you finish that one?
I did, yeah. I thought it was brilliant.
This looks like it's got Meryl in it from MGS.
Yeah, it's all these throwbacks. Like they're all linked in some way, but it's really good. It's point and click. Just click on objects in the room and some text, and then move the story forward that way. But it's it's pure narrative, visual novel style. It's really good if you can grab hold of a copy. You have to download it, unfortunately, because otherwise it's Japanese. If you manage to find a copy anywhere,
Interesting.
Cool. And yeah.
Speaking of Metal Gear, Tom, you finally started to dig into that a little bit, haven't you?
I have, yeah, but it's so overwhelming. I don't deal very well with like open world games. I find them just so involved that I can't play them for an hour here and there. I have to play them for more than that, and finding that time is difficult. But
I was
have
talking
managed
to
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say I have managed to make some sort of dent, and I am starting to enjoy it a bit more and starting to figure out the mechanics of it. But I'm probably not as far as anybody I know.
Well, I just talked to Dan this week, and he rolled the credits on it, and then I was playing it last night, and I knew I wasn't even remotely close to the end, and the credits rolled. Like, not just the post-mission credits, full game, 15 minutes worth of credits rolled. I'm like, what the fuck?
Really?
What? And then I watched through to the end of it, and I'm sending Dan a message, like, what the fuck? This is the dumbest ending ever. And then it pops in, and it kicks into Chapter 2, but as the longer this game goes on, the less I like it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, if anyone but that guy had made that game, it would have been edited down in ways I can't even imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Who could get away with a prologue that's an hour and a half that involves 15 minutes of doing nothing, 20 minutes of crawling on the floor? Like,
true.
I conceded a certain level of self-indulgence before, but this is just on another level. Like, I think it sucks to be powerful, to be honest, and you're surrounded by people who just won't tell you what you're doing is bad. God, yeah, no, Metal Gear Solid 5 is my first Steam refund ever because I just feel it. I just feel it coming.
You and I had that conversation about that earlier.
Like, I am not surprised at all to hear that there's a part of the game where the credits roll for 15 minutes and then the game keeps going. And it's because I knew things like that would continue to happen that I was like, I'm just not going to do this. I'm just not going to do it.
What's even worse is the first chapter of the game. All the missions are, I don't want to say they're awesome, but they're pretty cool. But the second chapter is nothing but taking those initial missions and redoing them, but making them harder. So one of the first missions in Chapter 2 is a subsistence mission where they drop you in and you have to destroy some communications towers. But you don't have any of your weapons and the guards spot you immediately. Or there's missions where if you get sighted at all, it's mission over. So they just rehash the entire first half of the game, but make it harder.
Oh, wow. I'm so happy I gave it back. Because that's the other thing that happened. This is going to sound petty, but like I did the first mission. I got through the prologue, whatever, I'm in Afghanistan, whatever. And like I hid behind a rock. And a guy saw me, and I'm like, no, he didn't see me. And I fucking unsolved. I just, no way.
For me, every mission just turns into a Call of Duty game.
Oh, yeah.
I'm straight in first person. I'm gunning everyone down. And I'm like guilty because I'm aware that a Metal Gear game shouldn't be played this way. But the game allows me to, and I'm just torn with this one. I love Metal Gear Solid. I'm absolutely big fan of the series. And I knew what I was getting into buying this huge open world experience. But I'm not... It's not totally my game, if I'm honest. But
no, it's not. I enjoy the freedom within. I don't see this as a Metal Gear game, mainly because it doesn't have the depth of story that I've come to enjoy with all of the previous games. They changed the main character's voice. He doesn't say shit. Suddenly, the first two games, that Big Boss was in, so Metal Gear 3 and Peace Walker, the dude talks all the time. You can't get him to fucking shut up. And now he says like 7 words the entire game.
Yeah.
So true. Yeah.
It's fun for what it is. Will I ever play through it again? Absolutely not.
No.
I've heard some things about Quiet, though.
What about Quiet?
Like,
her boobs are awesome.
It's just the laziest thing in the entire world.
Yeah. Well, the first time you see her, she's in a cage down below, and it's really cool when they go in to talk about her character and why she is the way she is. She's like a plant. She doesn't breathe. She absorbs energy. She doesn't eat. She absorbs everything through her skin. She breathes through her skin. So that's their justification for why she doesn't have clothes on. But when they go to talk about how she drinks, she gets up and she walks over to the shower and does this really seductive, sexy shower thing. And then they say, oh, and she drinks through her skin too. Like,
oh my god!
Yeah, there's that shower scene where and not only is it her in the shower dancing, but there's other dudes standing outside the cage watching her, and it's like, how much do you think you're gonna get away with here?
I feel like that's just so patronizing. Oh, we want to appeal to our audience, so we're just gonna put this half naked chick doing seductive things because that's the only thing that you guys care about.
Well, I could understand the justification that they made. She's a phenomenal sniper. She doesn't need to breathe, so she absorbs everything she needs through her skin. She can sit for days and hours on end. I understand that. I get it. It's awesome character development, but they do pander to the horny 13-year-old.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Quite heavily.
But you guys, when you think about being 13, I guess maybe just graphics, but I have no memory of ever seeking pornography in video games.
You cannot tell me with a dead straight face that you did not find Lara Croft's pointy tits unattractive.
Yeah, well, it's I don't know. I guess maybe it's just a different generation.
And that rumor that if you beat the game in just the right way, you could see her naked in the shower at the end of the game.
Right. Like in second grade, when some guy told me that if I got to like level 800 in Duck Hunt, like tigers started jumping out. Like, yeah.
I miss being
And
a kid.
I fell for that, so never again.
It's good though. We've spent a lot of time on Metal Gear 5 as it is. It's good, but I'm
Isn't it
very
possible
let down.
Japan is just trolling us, and they just he just did that to make like 1,000 podcasts cry out in anguish.
Who cares? I mean, this dude is
Can't he
just
be fucking with us. Like, yeah, I don't know.
this dude is just skating on diamond skates to the bank. He doesn't give a shit. He could have put out a hot turd and it still would have sold millions.
Yeah, and that's it for Konami, right? Like, they're all done. Like, they're shutting up shop, man. The next Silent Hill game is a slot machine. Like, don't even... No, it's really... No, come on, guys. I'm serious about Silent Hill, man. Like, I'm one of those people who's, like, shattered.
Silent Hill 2 was one of my favorite survival horror games of all time.
That is correct. Yes, it is.
And then it just went downhill. 3 was okay. 4 I still have sealed. I never bothered to open it. And then Konami sent me a copy of Downpour, and I went, well, this is crap.
Downpour is not very good. Yeah, 4 is worth playing. 4 is canon, and that's kind of where canon ends. And then it picks back up with Shattered Memories. You guys saw the best Wii game is definitely Silent Hill Shattered Memories. If you guys never played that, that's phenomenal. And that was written by Sam Barlow, who wrote her story.
Don't they have a PSP version of Shattered Memories?
Yes.
Do they?
Do, yeah.
If so, get that. Pick that shit up because it's great.
I wonder if that would be compatible with the Vita.
Good question. Not everything is.
We need to do a Silent Hill show
Yeah, you should.
now that Halloween's coming up.
So terrifying.
We should do
good
Silent
idea.
Hill 2 at some point. I love that game. Is like Pyramid Head is one of the best villains of all gaming.
My history of Silent Hill 2 is I got as far as just getting into the house, and then there was just no music, nothing. I had to turn it off.
It is the absolute most terrifying game in the world, and it
just
doesn't.
seems so terrifying. Yeah.
It doesn't rely on jump scares, and that's what's awesome. Resident Evil was terrifying because it was kind of the first game to delve into the jump scare territory.
Yeah.
And actually look decent, but Silent Hill, it's just that atmospheric terror. The very first game I remember playing, I bought it when it first came out, and sitting there with my stepbrother in the middle of the night, and we're walking through this school where it's kind of misty, and then shit starts happening, and the world just erodes into this dungeon-like atmosphere, and just being terrified of that. And like, I need to keep playing this.
It's not shock, it's dread.
Yeah,
it's
like,
so good.
I don't want to go forward, but I know that I have to. And it's just confronting that fear. And you know nothing's going to jump out, but whatever you come across is going to be just utterly terrifying.
It's like the only other game I've been playing this week is The Last of Us, because I shamefully haven't played it.
You're a sinner.
Yeah. So I'm like, I don't know, maybe halfway through. But yeah, it's those moments when you're in a house and you have to creep up the stairs with a flashlight and a handgun, and you know there's something up there, and it does so well of building tension, that game. And it's flawless in so many ways.
You will like Silent Hill 2 then. You will absolutely love it. There's a part in there where you go downstairs and it's really dark and you turn your flashlight on and you can either go forward into what looks like a scary hallway or you can turn left. And as soon as you turn left, you see, I think it cuts to a cutscene at that point, but you see all of these nurses, just standing there in this zombie-like state, and you just instantly freeze. You're like, if I move, I'm fucking dead. And you just have to weave through that. It's just so awesome. It's so well done.
Whenever there's a flashlight in a game, like, I immediately become terrified of every single little noise ever. Like, all the time.
I can't remember if Silent Hill 2 had the radio for the enemies. Will, do you remember if it did?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's got the radio.
I loved
radio
that.
and the flashlight.
It was such an awesome concept. And then if you want to play through it and even be more terrified, turn the radio off.
Yeah.
Because then you don't know when the enemies are coming. Yeah, we're gonna do a Silent Hill show coming up soon.
I was going to ask, Will, do you have any other stuff in the works?
Yeah, I mean, a game that I wrote, the script for, just came out called Plan of the Eyes. Check that out on Steam. That was made by a studio called Coco Cucumber here in Toronto. They're really great folks, and it's just sort of it's a sci-fi robot story. So I kind of try my hand at that, but I think it's got a little bit of my kind of style in it, but it's a bit different as well. I'm also helping to write Sometimes Always Monsters, which is the sequel to Always Sometimes Monsters by Vagabond Dog. Here in Toronto as well. And personally, my next game is called Little Red Lie. And it is basically it's another sort of generational story. I think you guys will really dig it. It's kind of about people our age, and I guess the millennials a little bit younger than us as well, and kind of the illusion that we all subside on of the baby boomers and our parents' money. And it's kind of about that money running out and nobody having work and kind of like crash into horrible economic circumstances, contrasted against another character you play, who's a person who's super rich and doesn't give a shit about anything. So it's an interesting contrast. I checked that out at littleredlie.com, and there's been some previews on like Killscreen and Kotaku as well.
I'm looking at it right now, and the one thing on the bottom left I love, lie about driving drunk directly into the strip club.
Yeah. So there's two characters you play. One is this just like complete horrible person, and the other one, the fundamental mechanic of the game is it's like Monkey Island style, but instead of like push, pull, get, pick up, there's only one verb, and it's lie, and all you do is lie. But the two characters draw out the contrast, because as the guy, lying to you means, intimidating people, bullshitting them, basically getting out of your evil acts through dishonesty. Whereas for the other character, lying because she doesn't have any money and she takes care of her parents and they're elderly and their money already out. For her, lying is more about managing people and their expectations, being dishonest in circumstances where you don't want to be, but you have to be, and just sort of it's about that sort of moral relativism and that contrast. So it's, again, a very story-driven game, and it's going to be very text-heavy, but I'm going to explore the extent to which dishonesty defines nearly everything about how all of us live all of our lives all of the time.
When is this going to be coming out, you think?
I was gonna put out a demo around now-ish, but now I feel like we're kind of in the fourth quarter of AAA death, and there's no hope. It's really tough out there. I could go on about this for another hour and a half, but it'll come out in 2016. I'm just not sure exactly how or how early.
Cool.
Oh, cool.
Well, we actually do have some emails this week. If you want to send us an email, factorysealed@manatank.com. We have a question or an email from Philip Hallwood. Says, Dear friends, what is your favorite roguelike game? I highly recommend playing the free game Tales of Majéal. If you guys are interested, you can find it here. FYI, it's made by one guy, and it's fantastic and difficult. Keep up the great work, Philip. Roguelikes. I feel like roguelikes were a kind of a flash in the pan.
Yeah, like a lot of people lied about playing Dwarf Fortress and how much they loved it, and then it just kind of ended.
Yes. And then Rogue Legacy came out, and everyone's like, oh my god, this is awesome. And fair enough, Rogue Legacy was awesome, but
yep.
I think that would be my favorite one. If I had to choose an older one, I'd probably say something along the lines of Azure Dreams from the PS1.
I would. Yeah. That's what I go with. Azure Dreams, that's the only one I played, I think.
That one was super frustrating in its time because it was so unique in that, okay, I spent all this time fighting these enemies and getting these weapons and getting these skills, and I died. And got to start all over.
Yeah. It's just too hardcore for me.
There was one on PS2 called Baroque, like the art style, and I never got a chance to play that one. But after playing Rogue Legacy and developing appreciation for it, I think I'd like to actually go back and play some of these older ones and see how heavily the old ones inspired the new ones.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not sure. What about you, Jess?
I don't think I've played any that could be like categorized.
It's a very small niche category. Do you have a favorite one, Will?
I'll say Risk of Rain. Really like Risk of Rain. Does that count? Like, how roguelike are you? Is a roguelike only if you're allowed to start again with absolutely nothing?
I think that's what qualifies a true roguelike.
Shit. I don't know then. Fuck that. I'm gonna play that.
not my cup of tea.
I have no time for that. That sounds like that's a young man's game. I'm gonna do it.
That's funny. Let's see. Sean McIntosh writes in. He says, I just recently came across your podcast, and it's quickly becoming my favorite one to listen to. I was getting tired of my usual list of podcasts as I spend a lot of my day driving, so I decided to search for something new. After finding a couple retro gaming podcasts and having them be complete duds, I came across Factory Sealed. Started off with the Final Fantasy VI episode, and it hooked me right away. Listened to about a dozen since, and my favorite by far have been the Final Fantasy VIII episodes. I remember playing through them as a kid, but never finishing it. So it was a lot of fun reliving that game vicariously through you guys. It inspired me to play through older RPG that I never finished and have been enjoying, which is my Final Fantasy IX playthrough. Really like the way you broke down 8 disc by disc, and it's something I'd love to see you guys do again. As for games I'd enjoy hearing you guys play through, I'd like to suggest Final Fantasy IX, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, Nindo, Way of the Ninja?
I know that game. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that one. We did Castlevania Symphony of the Night. That's the one we had Oliver on.
Yeah.
He says, in closing, and this one strikes home with me. He says, I'd just like to say one thing to Eric in regards to the Final Fantasy VIII episodes. Long live the notes. I caught so much shit for taking notes playing through that game.
Hey, you needed to. That was good. You drove it forward.
I did.
I'm trying. It's this old Koei game. It's really good. Sorry.
No, go ahead. In Nindo, I've never even heard of that one. I got to look that one up.
He plays like this exiled ninja in Japan, and it starts out as very RPG-like, but then over time you begin to amass an army, and you have to attack the capital. It's good, man.
This is for Super Nintendo?
Yeah, it's an old SNES, yeah.
Oh, man. I think we may have a suggestion. How long is it?
Oh, man, a while.
Oh, so it's an RPG.
It's an RPG. You're gonna have to grind. Well, you probably there's got to be a way to cheat in this day and age.
Oh, totally.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you want to send us an email, factorysealed@manatank.com. What are we going to play for next week, guys?
I've had a suggestion.
Okay. If you say a Nindo, I'm going to hurt you.
Ocarina of Time.
You really want to tackle Ocarina of Time in a week?
Well, no, it can be a back burner one.
So we could start it.
Yes.
It gives me a reason to play through the 3DS one again.
Podcast Racers. What is it called? No. Star Wars, the Podcast Race.
Pod Racer.
Thank you.
I don't.
I know that's not the thing. Why am I saying it?
Podcast Racers.
Nice.
I like Pod Racer. That game is awesome. I will totally play Star Wars Pod Racer next week.
Yeah.
Which are you talking about? The N64 one or the PS2 one?
N64.
Oh, okay. I can get behind that big time.
I'm renaming it.
Podcast Racer.
I'm going to put a label over it. Podcast Racer.
Jeez. We also had a suggestion. I don't know if you guys saw the chat, but there's a long and storied history behind Ben Schrader. And he actually, Jess, you probably know that name.
Yes.
He was supposed to have been one of the founding members of this show 3.5 years ago now.
And just on a wild world adventure.
Never, ever, ever showed up for a single show. And he finally showed up in the chat today. And he started sending me some text messages. So he actually recommended we play Demon's Crest for Super Nintendo.
Oh.
He's like, I just got Demon's Crest and it is kicking my ass. So I think we need to have a difficult game. So I say we do some Demon's Crest and some Pod Racer.
Sold.
And we purposely did not put out the random game generator this week because we knew Will was going to be on, and we're still going to be playing some Poppin' Tanks for next week. But look tomorrow on our Facebook page for the random game generator where you give us a console, a letter, and a number, and then next week we will pop those into the random game generator and kick out a game for us to play and possibly hate for the following week. Any final thoughts before we shut it down for the week?
No, just thanks for coming along, Will. It's great to hear.
Yeah, Will.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Actualsunlight.com.
Absolutely, and let us know when Little Red Lie hits, and we'll have you on for that one again.
Excellent. I'd love to.
Will, where can we find you on Twitter?
At Will O'Neill. That's 2 L's in Will, 2 L's in O'Neill.
Making it hard.
Yep.
Jeez. How about you, Jess? Where can we find you?
I am a Jess.
Tom?
At Hyperjelly.
You can find me at Honest Pizza. That's going to do it for this week. Once again, Will, thanks for taking the time to come on. It's been a blast.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
We'll see you all next week.